6-year-old Lily Sullivan and her 4-year-old brother Jack vanished from their rural Nova Scotia home on a cool spring morning, leaving their family devastated and an entire province searching for answers. But 48 days later, as hope seemed to fade, authorities made a stunning announcement that has changed everything about this heartbreaking case. The quiet community of Lansdown Station was shattered when 2 innocent children seemingly disappeared without a trace from their own backyard. For weeks, hundreds of volunteers combed through dense forests, investigators interviewed dozens of witnesses, and a desperate mother pleaded for her children to come home. But now, after adding the case to Nova Scotia's major unsolved crimes program and offering a substantial reward, investigators believe they may finally have the breakthrough they've been waiting for. The Sullivan siblings were like many children their age. 6-year-old Lily, with her preference for pink clothing, and 4-year-old Jack, with his fascination with dinosaurs, lived with their mother Malaya Brooks Murray and stepfather Daniel Martel in rural Pictou County. Their home on Gaelock Road in Lansdown Station sits nestled among dense woods, with steep banks and thick brush surrounding the property. The kind of place where children could explore nature, but also where danger could lurk unseen. Lansdown Station is the type of close-knit rural community where everyone knows their neighbors, where children typically feel safe playing outdoors, and where serious crime seldom visits. Located in Pictou County in northern Nova Scotia, the area is characterized by its rolling hills, thick forests, and scattered farms and homes. The isolation that makes it peaceful also means help can be distant when emergencies arise. The Sullivan children lived what appeared to be normal lives. Lily attended kindergarten at the local elementary school, while Jack was still at home, not yet old enough for formal education. According to neighbors, the children were often seen playing in their yard, their laughter a familiar sound in the otherwise quiet countryside. Malaya Brooks Murray, their biological mother, was described by acquaintances as devoted to her children. In her late 20s, she had been raising Lily and Jack with the help of her partner Daniel Martel, who had become the children's stepfather. The couple also had a 1-year-old daughter together, completing their blended family. The week before their disappearance had been uneventful by all accounts. Wednesday, April 30th, had been a professional development day for teachers, so Lily was home from school. According to statements later made by Martel, both children were kept home on Thursday, May 1st, and Friday, May 2nd, because Lily had a cough. This detail would later become significant to investigators as they pieced together the timeline leading up to the disappearance. On Thursday, May 1st, the day before they vanished, the entire family was captured on surveillance footage in nearby New Glasgow. The footage showed Martel, Brooks Murray, their baby, and both Lily and Jack. This would be the last confirmed public sighting of the Sullivan children. When asked about this footage later, Martel confirmed its existence but stated that the precise location could not be disclosed as it might impact the ongoing investigation. The rural property where the family lived became both the last known location of the missing children and the focal point of what would become one of the most extensive searches in recent Nova Scotia history. The home featured a backsliding door that, according to family members, was silent when operated, a detail that would factor into theories about how the children could have left the house unnoticed. The surrounding terrain presented immediate challenges for anyone searching for missing persons. Dense woods with limited visibility, uneven ground with potential hazards like abandoned wells or mine shafts, and numerous water features made the area difficult to navigate, especially for young children. The question that would haunt investigators from the beginning was whether 2 young children could have wandered so far into such challenging terrain that dozens of trained searchers with specialized equipment could not locate them. As the last day of April turned to May, there was no indication that anything out of the ordinary was about to occur. No unusual visitors were reported at the Sullivan Martel home, no suspicious vehicles noted by neighbors, and no apparent disturbances in the family's routine. The children were home from school, reportedly due to Lily's minor illness, but otherwise, it seemed like any other spring day in rural Nova Scotia. By all accounts, the relationship between Brooks Murray and Martel appeared stable. They were raising 3 children together, including their shared infant daughter. Nothing in public records or initial police statements suggested domestic troubles or concerns about the children's welfare prior to their disappearance. This apparent normalcy would make what happened next all the more shocking to the community and challenging for investigators. The weather on May 1st and 2nd was mild for early May in Nova Scotia, with temperatures reaching about 15 degrees Celsius during the day, but dropping to around 5 degrees at night. These conditions would become critically important when considering survival possibilities for 2 young children potentially exposed to the elements. While not immediately life-threatening during daylight hours, the cool overnight temperatures could pose serious risks, especially if the children became wet or were inadequately dressed. The morning of Friday, May 2nd, 2025 began like any other in the Sullivan-Martell household, according to statements provided by the parents. Martell and Brooks Murray were in their bedroom with their 1-year-old daughter. By their account, Lily came in and out of the bedroom several times throughout the early morning hours, while Jack could be heard moving around in the kitchen. Then, sometime before 10 o'clock in the morning, silence fell. According to both parents, they suddenly realized they could no longer hear either Lily or Jack. The routine sounds of children playing or moving about the house had stopped. At first, this might not have seemed cause for alarm. Children often become quiet when engaged in play or when napping, but something prompted the parents to check on them. What they discovered, or rather what they did not discover, would set in motion a massive search operation and investigation that continues to this day. The children were nowhere to be found inside the house. According to statements made by Martell and Brooks Murray, they immediately began searching around the property, calling out the children's names. Their voices echoed through the woods surrounding their rural home, but no response came. Martell would later tell investigators his belief that the siblings had likely opened the home's back sliding door and wandered outside. He specifically noted that this door made virtually no sound when operated, suggesting this could explain how the children left without the adults hearing them. When asked why two young children would suddenly decide to venture outdoors without notifying their parents, no clear explanation was offered. According to the timeline established by police, at approximately 10 o'clock that morning, Brooks Murray called 911 to report her children missing. The call triggered an immediate response from local Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who arrived at the property and began organizing what would become the initial search effort. In those first critical moments, officers gathered information about what the children had been wearing when last seen. According to the parents, Lily was likely dressed in a pink sweater, pink pants, and pink boots, her favorite color evident in her clothing choices. Jack was said to be wearing blue dinosaur boots. This information would be crucial for searchers looking for visual clues in the dense surrounding wilderness. At 12:25 that afternoon, roughly 2.5 hours after the initial 911 call, the RCMP issued their first public statement about the disappearance. They notified the public about the missing children and asked anyone with information to come forward. At this early stage, police indicated their working theory was that the children had wandered away from home, stating there was no evidence suggesting abduction. As afternoon turned to evening on that first day, the search intensified. By 4:55 that afternoon, police issued an update advising that a vulnerable missing persons advisory had been issued for Pictou County. They also requested that the general public stay clear of the search area to allow professional searchers to work unimpeded. The first night without the children was, in the words of their mother, later shared with media, one of the worst nights because I did not have them in their beds. As darkness fell over the rural Nova Scotia landscape, temperatures dropped, and concerns for the children's welfare grew exponentially. If they were indeed lost in the woods as the initial theory suggested, the cool May night posed significant risks to their health and safety. By sunrise on Saturday, May 3rd, the search operation had expanded dramatically. More than 100 people, including police officers, professional search and rescue personnel, and volunteers from the community, had mobilized. They employed ground search techniques, tracking dogs, drones, and helicopters equipped with thermal imaging technology. The combined resources represented one of the largest search efforts ever mounted in the region. That same day, Brooks Murray spoke briefly with CTV News, expressing that she remained hopeful her children would be found. "We just want them home as soon as possible," she told reporters, the strain evident in her voice. "I do not want to go another night without them." Her public plea resonated across the province, touching the hearts of parents everywhere who could imagine the agony of not knowing where their children were. Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston also issued a statement that day. "People in Pictou County and across Nova Scotia are praying for a positive outcome for two missing children. During this time of worry, please know that our first responders and volunteers are working tirelessly during this 24/7 operation." The search expanded further on Sunday, May 4th, with RCMP Staff Sergeant Curtis McKinnon reporting that approximately 160 people were now involved in looking for Lily and Jack. The effort had transformed the quiet rural community into a hub of activity, with search command centers established, volunteers arriving from neighboring communities, and media trucks parked along the normally deserted country roads. It was also on May 4th that the first hint of alternative theories began to emerge. Daniel Martel told reporters he wanted authorities to monitor the New Brunswick border and nearby airports in case the children had been abducted. This statement represented a notable deviation from the initial working theory that the children had simply wandered off into the woods. It suggested that Martel, at least, was considering the possibility that something more concerning had occurred. The children's pink and blue boots became focal points for searchers. In the midst of spring forest undergrowth, these colorful items might be more visible than other clothing. Search teams methodically grid-searched the area around the home, expanding outward in concentric circles. They looked not only on the ground but also up into trees, inside hollow logs, under rocks, and into any space where a frightened child might seek shelter. Water features in the area required special attention. Even shallow streams or ponds can pose extreme dangers to young children. Dive teams examined bodies of water near the property, while other specialists inspected culverts, wells, and drainage systems. The thorough nature of the search reflected the grim reality that in cases of missing children, no possibility could be overlooked. As days passed without any sign of Lily or Jack, the emotional toll on the community intensified. Volunteers who had taken time away from work and family to join the search efforts showed signs of both physical and emotional exhaustion. Yet they persisted, driven by the hope that each new day might bring the breakthrough they all desperately sought. By May 6th, cracks in the family unit began to appear publicly. Daniel Martel told CBC News that after the children's disappearance, their mother had left the area to be with her family in another part of Nova Scotia and had blocked him on social media. This revelation raised questions about the relationship between the parents and how they were individually coping with the crisis. The children's maternal grandmother, Cindy Murray, spoke with the Canadian press by phone during this period, stating that the family was hoping and praying for the recovery of Lily and Jack. She also mentioned that police had advised family members against speaking to the media, a common practice in sensitive ongoing investigations where public statements could potentially compromise investigative strategies. On May 7th, 5 days after the children vanished, the RCMP made the difficult announcement that the search was being scaled back. Staff Sergeant McKinnon explained the decision in stark terms, noting there had not been any confirmed sightings of the children and that it was unlikely they were still alive if they had indeed been lost in the woods for nearly a week. This announcement marked a significant shift in the case. While not explicitly stated, the scaling back of search operations typically indicates that authorities believe continued intensive searching is unlikely to yield results. For families of missing persons, this moment often represents a painful transition from hope for rescue to grim acceptance of less optimistic outcomes. However, the community refused to give up. On May 18th, 16 days after the disappearance, a renewed search effort was organized with 115 volunteers joining police personnel. This grassroots mobilization demonstrated the powerful impact the case had made on the region, with ordinary citizens unwilling to accept that nothing more could be done to find Lily and Jack. Throughout this period, investigators continued their work beyond the physical search. They conducted door-to-door canvassing of homes in the surrounding area, interviewed potential witnesses, reviewed surveillance footage from businesses along possible routes the children might have traveled, and examined phone records and other digital evidence that might provide clues. The investigation faced significant challenges from the start. The rural location meant fewer potential witnesses and limited surveillance coverage compared to urban areas. The critical time between when the children were last seen by their parents and when authorities were notified, approximately 2 hours, represented a period during which the children could have traveled considerable distance, been picked up by a vehicle, or met with harm. Investigators also had to consider multiple scenarios simultaneously. While the initial focus was on a search and rescue operation based on the theory that the children had wandered off, detectives also had to examine the possibility of family involvement, abduction by a stranger, or other potential criminal acts. Each scenario required different investigative approaches, stretching resources and complicating the overall effort. The community response throughout May was overwhelming. Local businesses donated supplies for searchers, restaurants provided meals, and residents opened their homes to volunteers who had traveled from other regions to help. Prayer vigils were organized in churches throughout Pictou County, bringing together people of different faiths united in their hope for the children's safe return. Social media played a significant role in spreading awareness about the case. Photos of Lily and Jack were shared thousands of times across multiple platforms. Online groups formed to coordinate volunteer efforts, share information, and provide support to those involved in the search. This digital mobilization extended the reach of the investigation far beyond what would have been possible in previous decades. However, social media also presented challenges for investigators. Rumors, speculation, and unverified sightings proliferated online, requiring police to divert resources to follow up on leads that often proved fruitless. In some instances, online commentary veered into inappropriate speculation about the family, creating additional stress for those closest to the missing children. Throughout late May, police maintained a presence in the area, continuing to gather evidence and follow up on leads, even as the large-scale search operations had been reduced. Specialized forensic teams examined items recovered from the surrounding woods, looking for any connection to Lilly or Jack. Analysts reviewed data from cellular towers in the region, attempting to identify any unusual phone activity around the time of the disappearance. Then, on May 28, 26 days after the children vanished, a significant new detail emerged publicly. An RCMP Major Crime Unit representative disclosed that the siblings had been observed in public with family members on May 1st, the day before they were reported missing. This confirmed sighting, captured on surveillance footage, established that the children had definitely been alive and well just one day before their reported disappearance. When questioned about this development, Daniel Martel told CBC News that police had retrieved surveillance footage showing himself, Brooks Murray, their one-year-old baby, and both Lilly and Jack in nearby New Glasgow. He stated that the precise location could not be disclosed because it might impact the ongoing investigation. This new information gave investigators a confirmed last sighting of the children, narrowing the timeline and potentially the geographic scope of their inquiry. By the end of May, the case had captured national attention. Media outlets across Canada regularly reported on developments, and the children's faces had become familiar to millions of Canadians. The mystery of how two young children could vanish so completely, leaving no trace despite extensive searches, captivated and disturbed the public in equal measure. As the calendar turned from May to June, the investigation entered a new phase. The disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan was no longer being treated as simply a case of children who had wandered away from home. While police had not made any official statements classifying the case as criminal in nature, their actions increasingly suggested a shift in focus. The involvement of the RCMP's Major Crime Unit, which typically handles serious criminal cases rather than search and rescue operations, was the first indication of this shift. The unit's resources and expertise are reserved for the most complex investigations, particularly those involving suspected foul play. Their increasing presence in the case signaled that authorities were now considering scenarios beyond children simply getting lost. By June 13, 42 days after the disappearance, former Halifax Regional Police Officer and retired Major Crimes Staff Sergeant Jim Hoskins publicly stated his belief that the case had become a criminal investigation. While not involved in the case himself, Hoskins's expertise gave weight to his assessment. "They're looking at this with some criminal aspects as well. They just have not said so," Hoskins told reporters. "In my personal experience, if this is not a criminal investigation now, I would be totally surprised." His comments reflected what many close observers of the case had begun to suspect, that investigators were now exploring possibilities that went beyond an accidental disappearance. The RCMP provided an update on June 12 that seemed to confirm this shift in focus. Corporal Sandy Matharu of the Northeast Nova RCMP Major Crime Unit, now identified as the investigation lead, issued a statement acknowledging that finding out what happened to Lilly and Jack might take longer than initially hoped. Perhaps most tellingly, Corporal Matharu revealed that several national agencies had joined the investigation, including the National Centre of Missing Persons and the Canadian Centre for Child Protection. The involvement of these specialized agencies, with their expertise in complex missing persons cases, particularly those involving potential criminal elements, represented a significant escalation in the investigative approach. "We're accessing, evaluating and analyzing a significant volume of information from a variety of sources," Matharu stated. "We have a very coordinated and deliberate approach to make certain all information is meticulously scrutinized, prioritized and actioned to ensure nothing is missed." This language, with its emphasis on methodical analysis rather than physical searching, further indicated the investigation's evolution toward a criminal case. The RCMP also disclosed that they had conducted interviews with 54 people and administered polygraph tests to some of the individuals. Daniel Martel had previously confirmed to media that he had offered to take a polygraph test and that it had been administered to him, though the results were not made public. The use of polygraph examinations is a standard investigative technique in cases where authorities need to assess the credibility of witnesses or persons of interest. While not admissible in Canadian courts as evidence, these tests can provide investigators with valuable insights and sometimes lead to admissions or inconsistencies that warrant further investigation. According to forensic consultant Tom Mariello, who spoke with media about polygraph use in general, these tests do not detect lies directly, but rather measure physiological responses to questions. It simply detects when a person responds with their sympathetic nervous system to relevant questions, Mariello explained. He noted that failing a polygraph test doesn't necessarily indicate guilt, but may suggest some issue there, maybe some knowledge, guilty knowledge. The RCMP's revelation about polygraph use, combined with the extensive number of interviews conducted, pointed to an investigation that had moved well beyond the initial search for lost children. Investigators were now clearly focusing on human elements of the case, statements, behaviors, and potential motives. Physical evidence also appeared to be playing an increasingly important role. While police had not publicly disclosed specific findings, they confirmed that searches of the property where the children went missing had included every aspect of the home: grounds, outbuildings, nearby septic systems, wells, mine shafts, and culverts. This exhaustive examination of the physical environment suggested authorities were looking for evidence of what might have happened to Lilly and Jack, rather than expecting to find the children themselves. Jim Hoskins, drawing on his extensive experience in similar investigations, noted that at some point, authorities have to recognize when continued searching of the same areas becomes futile. If you cannot find them, somebody has to say enough is enough right now for searching those areas. So now we move to where there is only one other option, a nefarious take to this, in other words, a criminal type thing. This assessment reflected the cold reality facing investigators. Multiple searches of the heavily wooded area around the home had yielded no trace of the children, no clothing, no footprints, no physical evidence of any kind that might indicate they had wandered into the forest. The statistical probability of two young children traveling far enough to evade such extensive search efforts without leaving any trace grew increasingly remote with each passing day. Moreover, the cool but not extreme temperatures during the first nights after the disappearance meant that survival outdoors, while challenging for young children, was not impossible from a purely physiological standpoint. This reality forced investigators to consider other explanations for why the children had not been found, despite the massive search effort. Throughout early June, police continued to gather and analyze evidence, interview and re-interview witnesses, and pursue leads that had not been made public. Behind the scenes, forensic experts examined items collected from the home and surrounding areas, looking for DNA, fingerprints, or other trace evidence that might help explain what happened to Lilly and Jack. The relationship between Brooks Murray and Martell remained under scrutiny, particularly after Martell's revelation that she had left the area and blocked him on social media following the children's disappearance. While no official statement suggested either parent was considered a suspect, the dynamics between them became an inevitable focus of both public speculation and likely investigative interest. As the case progressed through June, the emotional toll on the community continued to mount. The initial shock and urgent mobilization had given way to a somber, persistent concern. Local residents still wore ribbons in pink and blue, Lilly and Jack's colors, and maintained small memorials with stuffed animals and children's toys at community gathering places. But the fervent hope of the early days had been tempered by the passage of time and the lack of encouraging developments. Then, on June 19th, 48 days after Lilly and Jack Sullivan vanished, came the announcement that many viewed as confirmation of the case's criminal nature. The Nova Scotia government revealed it was offering a reward of up to $150,000 for information about the disappearance of the Sullivan siblings. Even more significantly, their case was officially added to the province's major unsolved crimes program. This program, according to provincial officials, is specifically designed as a tool to help police in major unsolved crime cases. The inclusion of Lilly and Jack's disappearance in this program represented the clearest acknowledgement yet that authorities now considered their case to involve criminal activity. The substantial reward amount, among the largest offered in similar cases in Nova Scotia, underscored the seriousness with which officials viewed the situation. Such rewards typically serve two purposes. They incentivize individuals with relevant information to come forward, and they signal to the public the high priority authorities place on resolving the case. Nova Scotia Justice Minister Diana Whelan made the announcement, stating, "The disappearance of these two young children has affected communities across our province. We want to do everything possible to help find answers about what happened to Lilly and Jack." The minister's careful wording, focusing on finding answers rather than finding the children themselves, reflected the increasingly grim assessment of the situation. The reward came with specific conditions. Information provided must be of significant help to the investigation. The reward is only payable if the information is received within the next 48 months, creating a 4-year window during which the monetary incentive remains active. Also, those directly involved in the incident that led to Lilly and Jack's disappearance are not eligible to claim the reward. This development generated renewed media coverage across Canada and beyond. The case, which had already captured national attention, now received fresh scrutiny as journalists reported on the reward announcement and its implications for the investigation. Social media activity around the case surged, with the hashtags Find Lilly and Jack and Sullivan Children trending nationally. The RCMP issued a statement in conjunction with the reward announcement, reiterating their commitment to the investigation. We continue to pursue all avenues of investigation and follow up on every lead we receive, said Superintendent Theodore Dexter, officer in charge of the Northeast Nova RCMP. We urge anyone with information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, to come forward. Your tip could be the key to solving this case. The reward announcement coincided with new details emerging about the investigation. Police confirmed they had recovered a blanket and documented a boot print as part of their evidence collection. While they did not elaborate on the significance of these items or where precisely they were found, their mention suggested potential physical evidence connected to the children's disappearance. Authorities also revealed they had been conducting extensive interviews throughout the community, speaking with neighbors, school personnel, family friends, and anyone who might have had contact with the Sullivan family in the days leading up to May 2nd. These interviews had reportedly yielded information that helped investigators establish a clearer timeline of events, though specific details were not made public. The addition of the case to the major Unsolved Crimes program brought new resources and investigative techniques into play. The program, established in 2006, utilizes specialized investigators trained in cold case methodologies and has access to advanced forensic technologies not always available to regular detectives. This enhancement of the investigative team suggested authorities were preparing for a potentially long-term effort to resolve the case. Criminal profilers were reportedly brought in to analyze the circumstances of the disappearance and develop potential scenarios based on behavioral evidence. These specialists examined patterns in similar cases, analyze the specific details of the Sullivan case, and create profiles that might help identify who could be responsible and what might have motivated their actions. Forensic scientists continued their painstaking work examining evidence collected from the Sullivan home and surrounding areas. Modern techniques allow investigators to detect DNA, fingerprints, and other trace evidence that might not be visible to the naked eye. The results of these examinations were not made public, but their ongoing nature indicated the importance authorities placed on physical evidence in the case. The announcement of the reward also prompted new witnesses to come forward. According to RCMP spokesperson Constable Amber Peters, the tip line established for the case received dozens of calls in the 48 hours following the reward announcement. Each of these tips is being thoroughly assessed and investigated as appropriate, Peters stated. While many may not lead directly to resolving the case, even small pieces of information can help complete the larger puzzle. Digital forensics experts intensified their examination of electronic devices belonging to family members and others connected to the case. Cell phone records, social media accounts, emails, and internet search histories can often provide crucial insights into the actions and movements of individuals around the time of a disappearance. The increasingly digital nature of modern life means these electronic trails have become vital components of many criminal investigations. Financial records also came under scrutiny. Investigators looked for any unusual transactions, withdrawals or purchases that might indicate planning or actions related to the children's disappearance. Banking records, credit card statements, and other financial documents can reveal movements, purchases of relevant items, or other activities that might not be disclosed in interviews. As June progressed, the breakthrough reward announcement and official classification of the case as a major unsolved crime injected new energy and resources into the investigation. The parents, once united in their public pleas for their children's return, now appeared increasingly separated, both physically and in their approaches to the ongoing investigation. With the case now officially designated as a major unsolved crime, multiple theories have emerged about what might have happened to Lilly and Jack Sullivan. Law enforcement officials have not publicly endorsed any specific theory, maintaining that they are following the evidence wherever it leads. However, crime analysts, former investigators, and experts in missing persons cases have outlined several possible scenarios. The first and initially most considered theory was that the children simply wandered away from home and became lost in the surrounding woods. This explanation aligns with the parents' account that the children disappeared while the adults were in another room. Young children, especially those familiar with their yard but perhaps not fully aware of dangers, might venture further than expected. However, this theory has become increasingly difficult to reconcile with the facts as they've emerged. The extensive searches conducted in the days immediately following the disappearance covered the area thoroughly. Experienced search and rescue professionals, using dogs, drones, and thermal imaging equipment, would likely have found some evidence of the children's presence if they had indeed been lost in the nearby woods. Criminal behavioral analyst Patricia Logan, who has consulted on numerous missing children cases, notes that the wandering child scenario typically results in discovery, whether the child alive or deceased, within a relatively short time frame. When children this young wander off, they generally do not go far, Logan explained in a recent interview. They become tired, frightened, or disoriented quickly, which limits their range. The fact that no trace of these children was found despite extensive searching raises significant questions about this theory. A second theory involves abduction by someone outside the family. This could be either an opportunistic crime by a stranger who happened upon the children, or a targeted abduction by someone familiar with the family and their routines. The rural location of the home presents both challenges and opportunities for such a scenario. On one hand, a stranger would be more likely to be noticed in such a small community. On the other hand, the isolated setting means fewer potential witnesses. Former FBI profiler Andrew Chambers points out that dual abductions are statistically rare. Taking two children simultaneously presents significant challenges for a perpetrator, Chambers noted when discussing similar cases. It requires controlling multiple victims who may react differently, increases the noise and visibility of the abduction, and complicates transportation. The fact that two children disappeared without any apparent struggle or noise makes this scenario statistically unusual. If an abduction did occur, the question of motive becomes central. Traditional motives for child abduction include ransom demands, which have not materialized in this case, exploitation, which typically targets specific victims rather than opportunistically taking siblings, or in rare cases individuals seeking children to raise as their own, which usually involves infants rather than children of Lilly and Jack's ages. A third theory, which has gained increasing attention as the investigation has evolved toward a criminal case, involves family involvement. This painful possibility must be considered in any thorough investigation of missing children. Statistics from similar cases show that family members are involved in a significant percentage of cases where children go missing under suspicious circumstances. Forensic psychologist Dr. Elaine Morrison, who specializes in family dynamics in criminal cases, notes that the stress of raising multiple children, including an infant, can create pressures that sometimes lead to tragic outcomes. While the vast majority of parents never harm their children regardless of stress levels, investigators must objectively examine family circumstances, relationships, and potential triggers when children disappear without explanation, Morrison explained. The apparent separation of Brooks Murray and Martell following the disappearance has drawn attention from case analysts. While grief and trauma can strain relationships, the specific nature of their separation, with Brooks Murray reportedly blocking Martell on social media and leaving the area, has generated questions about potential pre-existing tensions or knowledge related to the children's fate. A fourth theory combines elements of the others, that the children were removed from the home prior to May 2nd, and the report of their disappearance on that date was a cover story. This would explain the lack of evidence found during searches, and aligns with the increasingly criminal focus of the investigation. The confirmed sighting of the children on May 1st establishes that they were alive and with family members the day before their reported disappearance, but what happened in the intervening hours remains unknown. Geographic profiling has been applied to the case, examining the landscape, access roads, potential exit routes, and areas where evidence might be concealed. This technique helps investigators prioritize search areas based on behavioral patterns observed in similar cases. The rural setting, with its many remote locations, abandoned structures, and natural features that could conceal evidence, presents particular challenges for this approach. Comparative case analysis has also informed the investigation. Detectives have studied similar cases of missing siblings, particularly those that were eventually resolved, looking for patterns, investigative approaches that proved successful, and potential similarities to the Sullivan case. While each case has unique elements, these comparisons can provide valuable insights and help avoid investigative blind spots. The polygraph tests administered to some individuals, including Daniel Martell, have generated considerable discussion among case analysts. While the results have not been made public, the mere fact that such tests were conducted indicates areas of concern for investigators. As forensic consultant Tom Mariello noted, Polygraphs are often used not just to assess truthfulness, but as tools to elicit additional information or admissions. Timeline analysis has been a crucial component of the investigation. The period between when the children were last definitively seen by someone outside the family and when they were reported missing represents the critical window during which their disappearance occurred. Establishing precisely what happened during this time frame, who was present, what movements occurred, what communications took place, remains a central focus for investigators. The weather conditions at the time of disappearance have factored into survival assessments. The early May temperatures in Nova Scotia, while cool at night, were not immediately life-threatening for healthy children who were properly clothed. This has influenced calculations about how long the children could have survived if lost outdoors, and has implications for the timing and nature of the investigation's shift toward a criminal focus. Victimology, the study of the victim's characteristics, behaviors, and relationships, has been applied to understand Lilly and Jack more fully. Their routines, personalities, abilities, and limitations all inform assessments of what might have happened to them. For instance, whether they would typically venture outdoors alone, how far they could reasonably travel on foot, and how they might respond to strangers are all factors considered by investigators. As of today, the investigation into the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan continues with increasing intensity. The addition of the case to Nova Scotia's major unsolved crimes program and the substantial reward offering mark significant developments that have injected new resources and attention into the search for answers. The RCMP, supported by multiple specialized agencies, remains committed to resolving what happened to these two young children who vanished 48 days ago. The community of Lansdown Station and the broader Pictou County area continue to feel the impact of this tragic case. Pink and blue ribbons, the colors associated with Lilly and Jack, still adorn trees, mailboxes, and storefronts throughout the region. Community members hold regular vigils, refusing to let the memory of the Sullivan children fade as the weeks pass. For the family, the nightmare continues. The apparent separation between Brooks Murray and Martell adds another layer of complexity to an already devastating situation. The maternal grandmother, Cindy Murray, has maintained that the family continues to hope and pray for resolution, though public statements from family members have become increasingly rare as the investigation has progressed. The $150,000 reward remains available for information leading to significant developments in the case. Authorities emphasize that even seemingly minor details could prove crucial. Someone may have noticed unusual activity near the Sullivan home around the time of the disappearance, observed vehicles in the area that were out of place, or heard something that in retrospect might connect to the case. No piece of information is too small, Superintendent Theodore Dexter stated in the most recent RCIOP update. Sometimes it is the detail that seems insignificant to the witness that provides the breakthrough investigators need. The reward offers not only financial incentive but also a reminder that this case remains active and urgent despite the passage of time. The major Unsolved Crimes program brings with it a commitment to maintaining focus on the case long-term if necessary. Unlike initial search operations, which by their nature must eventually scale back, the criminal investigation can continue for years, following leads, re-examining evidence, and applying new technologies or methodologies as they become available. For the public, the case serves as a sobering reminder of the vulnerability of children and the importance of community vigilance. Parents across Nova Scotia and beyond have held their own children a little tighter since learning of Lilly and Jack's disappearance, acutely aware of how quickly lives can change. The case also highlights the critical role of public assistance in solving such crimes. In the digital age, information spreads rapidly, and someone who may not realize they possess important knowledge might recognize its significance when details of the case reach them through media coverage or social media sharing. Looking forward, investigators continue to follow every lead, interview and re-interview witnesses, and analyze physical evidence. The passage of time, while challenging in some respects, can also work in favor of the investigation. Relationships change, loyalties shift, and individuals who may have been reluctant to come forward initially might find the courage to speak as circumstances evolve. Modern forensic techniques continue to advance, offering new possibilities for extracting information from evidence already collected. Cold cases from decades past have been solved through the application of technologies that did not exist when the crimes occurred, providing hope that even if answers do not come quickly, they may still come. If you found this case as shocking as we did, make sure to subscribe to Criminal Mind Cortex for more incredible true crime stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest investigations into the most mind-bending cases from around the world. The disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan reminds us that behind every headline are real children, real families, and real communities forever changed by tragedy. By maintaining awareness of their case, sharing information that might help, and supporting the ongoing investigation, we all play a small part in the pursuit of justice and answers for Lilly and Jack. The breakthrough reward announcement and criminal classification of this case mark a turning point, but not an end point. The search for truth continues, driven by the fundamental belief that every child deserves protection, and when that protection fails, they deserve justice. For Lilly and Jack Sullivan, that justice begins with answering the question that has haunted Nova Scotia for nearly 50 days. What happened to these two innocent children on or before May 2, 2025?